I just want to tell you all how happy I am to be back in the studio, making a picture again. You don't know how much I've missed all of you. And I promise you I'll never desert you again. Because after Salome, we'll make another picture and another picture. You see, this is my life. It always will be. There's nothing else. Just us. And the cameras. And those wonderful people out there in the dark. All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Audience.
You knew there was an audience. What did you think those seats were for?
I haven't performed in front of an audience for 28 years. Audience? I played a butler. I had one line! I forgot it.
But don't worry. This is going to be easy.
For you, maybe. Not for me. I'm not an actor. I'm a movie star!
And on that note, greetings, campers, and welcome to today's webinar, the latest in our webinar series, for which we thank the good folks at TELUS who made it possible for us to be here today. My name is Scott Walker. I am the Executive Director of the Canadian Artists Network, CAN, and I'd like to welcome you to our session today on video production. It's a pleasure to welcome artists from right across Canada today, and I would like to begin by acknowledging that we live, work, travel, and create on the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples who have cared for this land, now called Canada, since time immemorial. We acknowledge this as part of our covenant with Indigenous nations to share, respect, and protect the land in the spirit of peace and friendship, and to honor the future generations of all of our nations. Well, now, despite the opening sequence, we do not claim that today's webinar will turn you into Cecil B. DeMille, which is just as well because he's dead. I don't know where that came from. However, you may end up with the capacity to star in your own movie, at least a movie of your own making. By the way, if you weren't familiar with those two clips that we played, the first one was Gloria Swanson hardly overacting at all in Sunset Boulevard from 1950. The second one was Peter O'Toole hardly overacting at all in My Favorite Year from 1982, which happens to be one of my favorite movies. Now, the point of today's webinar is to give you a start on creating videos for your website or for social media for private use, or if you're an actor, for those dreaded self-tapes. Now, I know that questions will occur to you as you're listening to today's presenter. Please put your questions in the Q&A box. We'll try to get to as many of them as possible and keep them as brief as possible, if you will. That would help. Our special guest today is a member of our community and no stranger to anybody who has participated in these webinars before. She has presented before. She is here to present again. Please welcome Leah Murray.
Thank you, Scott. Welcome, everybody, and hopefully we'll be able to answer a whole bunch of your questions about this technology and get everything rolling along nicely. Okay, so we're talking about video production with OpenShot. And OpenShot is a free application that you can download off the internet that will help you put your video clips and your soundtracks and your visuals all in one lovely package and help you create a movie with it. There is pre-work, and I'll cover a little bit of that when we start. Okay. So our agenda for today is to figure out what OpenShot is and what its similar apps and competitors are, get an overview of the program, go through some of the basics of the video and audio editing, give you some best practices, video how-tos, audio how-tos, the differences between still slides, video clips, and audio clips, And just a couple of very brief comments about effects and transitions, because those are always very readily available in these free programs and whatnot. And then we'll have a tying it all together in a brief demo. I've got a little demo video that I'm going to make for you on screen. And then we will have a chance for question period. And there is a handout as well that will be up with the link to this workshop at the end of things. So OpenShot is actually an open source video editing software package that lets you create videos of your own using stills and music and soundtracks and so on and so forth. I'm just going to skip through this because it'll go on forever if I let it. Next. Okay, some of the similar apps, the competitors to OpenShot are things called Power Director, Adobe Premiere Elements, iMovie, Pinnacle Studio, Movavi, Adobe Premiere, Final Cut Pro. Some of these may be familiar to you already. Almost all of them cost some money, and all of the ones that are marked for amateurs on this screen are actually fairly limited in what they can do compared to OpenShot. OpenShot's probably a bit more of a technical curve, but hopefully you'll be capable of tackling that pretty easily after today. So to install and set up OpenShot, you download it. There's the link. Anything you see in pink lettering or pinkish red lettering on this screen, by the way, is a clickable link, and those have been replicated in your handout. So you can actually go through the handout with the recording afterward and play with things at your own pace. We're going to move fairly fast through this today, but you will have the handout and the access to the screenshot together, and you will be able to click on the links as you need to when you're reviewing in your own time. Okay, there is also a note about installation for the different platforms there. So if you do want to download it, install it, and play with it, it will accommodate whatever application or whatever operating system you're using. So when you actually get it downloaded and get it launched, you're going to see a screen that looks like this the first time you open it. And as you can see, it's got a ton of little window panes with stuff in it here, all over the place, and it looks kind of scary. Now, I don't ever use all of the window panes. So what I do is I very frequently just simplify it when I get it open by closing some of these window panes so I don't have to look at them anymore. My screen looks like this 99.9% of the time. And the only time it gets any more complicated than that is when I decide I actually need something more complicated to achieve an effect or something. And I'll show you exactly how that works in a couple of minutes, how you can simplify your launch screen as well, so you're not overwhelmed with buttons and bells and whistles at the start. Like every other application, OpenShot has a menu and file bar. That's up here. It has a file handling menu right below that. So, or right above it, actually. So if you click on file, you'll end up with this menu here, and it will give you everything in writing. I'm a great believer in menus. And I'm a great believer in control keys and stuff to move around. They do speed up your life. They do speed up your familiarization with an unfamiliar application. And a lot of them are much more informative than these lovely icons that everybody gives you that don't mean a darn thing until after you've been through the menu a few times. Okay, so feel free to use the names, the words. Don't worry too much about the pictures because with time comes familiarity, and once you get once you know the menu, you'll start to recognize those little buttons on the file bar up here, just from looking at the menus. Okay, so your file menu gives you all of the stuff you have here. And it's all the basics of managing the program overall. Your edit button gives you the undo and the redo buttons and a clear button. I almost never use those for undo. I just use the control key and the letter Z or Z. I'm so familiar with that one. It's because I have to undo so many things that I stupidly do that I never bothered much with this menu until I started preparing this website. One thing that is on this menu that's very useful is this preferences button. And if you click on edit and preferences, you will get a whole bunch of handy little tabs here. And one of them actually has all the keyboard shortcuts in it for doing stuff in Zoom. So if you find that you need to know more about how to do things quickly and efficiently, once you're familiar with it, then that is your best friend in this whole program. Okay. In the title folder, all that it does is it lets you put a title on the screen, okay, for whatever you're talking about. And it also lets you access the animated titles window pane. Once you get to view, okay, it starts, whoops, sorry. It starts getting useful. It lets you flick your toolbar back on if you accidentally turn it off. I do that all the time, turn it off by accident. It lets you move into full screen mode. It lets you select different kinds of views, and it lets you manage all of those window panes as well in here. So the docs part and the views part are the parts that you would be concerned about there. When you get into the help menu, there are tutorials galore in the help menu. There are a ask a question function that takes you into the thing and access to the little community online that says, give us some help, that you can go to give help, or you can go to talk to people about what you're trying to accomplish and maybe get some hints that way. Translate this application is actually a language translator for whatever you're doing. I haven't played with that. I haven't done anything that required bilingual presentations as yet. But I expect that the day is coming because I'm doing more and more work with multilingual groups. They do ask for donations on this button, but they don't seem to be pursuing that too hard, and they don't generally pester you with a lot of email nag slips or anything like that. And of course, then there's About OpenShot, which tells you about your installation for it. Again, for the time that you're just starting, use the menus. The biggest ones that I use are the file, okay, the not the title, the untitled project, the preferences one here. I almost never get into the tutorials anymore, but I made heavy use of that at the beginning. So once you get on your main screen, there are other things that happen there. We just covered this little bit here. Now, The next thing that I really want you to take note of is these little buttons in every window pane corner that are hardly noticeable. When you go in there and you see all of those windows to start with, you will see all of those window panes that are on the main screen. Each of them has a little button like this. And the first thing I do with a new installation of OpenShot is go and shut all the window panes that I'm not going to use right away. I end up with, I do that by clicking on the X in the little corner here. And then if I want them back later, I just go up to the view and start pulling window panes up there. I don't like to have a very cluttered screen. My brain is cluttered enough, so I tend to use a very simplified screen on all the applications that I want. And I include only the assets window pane, which shows all of the images, slides, and video clips that I am actually going to use in my project once I load them. It shows the video playback window, and it shows the track editing or timeline editing window. And those are the only three I generally have open. They actually do 90% of the work. There are controls in each of these screens. The show all, the video, the audio, the image. You can specify only which items you actually want to see there. I leave it on show all because my video work is fairly compact. I don't have like a ton of clips and banners and this and that. So I just leave it on show all. However, it has a huge capacity for handling large numbers of things, only limited by the abilities of your hardware. So if you do end up with an actual ton of stuff that you have to do, just flicking on this menu bar up here with the video, audio, image, and the filter button will allow you to change all of your, just see all the videos, just see all the audios, just see all the image. You will also see that the video playback window has playback controls of its own. These may already be familiar to you from your VCR. They're in fact pretty much identical to every VCR out there. There's a start button that changes into a play button or a playing button. When you click it, there's a go back to the beginning button and a go right to the end button. And there's a backup button and a go forward button that are vary between different applications as to how far or how fast they go back and forward. I tend to be a bit of an extremist, so I use the go back to the beginning and go back to the end ones extensively and hardly ever use these ones. There are also on the sides of the windows these little bars of dots that I've highlighted here, and those are for scaling the size of the window. So if you need more room in this window, you just go up here and you grab those little dots and you drag them so that that window opens up wider or gets slower. And you'll see that the video playback window actually has both sideways and up and down ones. I tend to start out with my video playback like this because that's the most comfortable way for me to see how much is going on actually in my video that I'm making. Down below, we have the timeline windows, and the timeline windows actually have the primary editing tools in them for this handy little application. You'll notice that there are plus signs in the timeline window and in the main item. Those big green plus signs are for adding files to the application for you to work with. You can If you click on this one, you will get files from your computer loaded into this application window. And if you click on this one, you will get files from this window loaded into your timelines. Now, audio and video tend to operate in layers. And so they provide layered tracks for you to work in. Those are called the asset tracks down here. And you can add more asset tracks actually by clicking on this as well. If you've got a bunch of stuff in there and whoops, sorry, you want to go to track 3 and you're at the top, you just sit on track 3, click the button, and you'll get another track to work with. It usually starts out with 3 to 5 tracks by default. Mine is now defaulting to 6 tracks because I've taught it that I'm greedy for tracks. I like lots of them. You'll also see on here these little tools, okay? And there's a magnet and a pair of scissors and a dropper of some sort. And of course, they move forward and move back to the beginning and end, and a timeline marker on here. There is also a time scale slider. If you grab this little button and move it down here, your stuff that you're seeing in here gets bigger, and your timeline markers actually get more detailed when you slide this to the left. When you slide it out to the right, everything in here gets smaller, so you can see your entire layout of what you've done with your with the things that you're putting into your video. This little magnet is sort of halfway between a joy and a nuisance. It actually is the button that controls clicking to a specific point in the timeline, and it defaults to on all the time. So the first thing I do is turn it off because I don't necessarily want stuff automatically going places that I haven't put it. I'm a bit of a control freak, and I'm presuming that most people who work with these things end up feeling that way too. The scissors is actually a video and audio clipper tool, and sometimes it will launch already in the on position, and I turn it off too because I don't want it just running along doing stuff. This little drop is for dropping a marker at a specific point in your files. So if you just want to work on a small section for a while of your project, you can drop a marker here and drop a marker here, and when you hit the playback controls, these controls will only go back to the beginning of where you drop the marker and so on and so forth. It will only work on that little segment for a while. Once you have done that, then you can click on the little marker that appears in here, and you can drag it off to the left or drag it off to the right and get rid of it. These, of course, work exactly the same way as these ones up here, only on the timeline here instead of on your video playback. All right, and that is the basics of how you manage your main screen and the controls. Don't panic about trying to memorize all this at once. All of this is in your handout, and all of it will be available to you after this session so that you can review. The timeline editing tools, I have given a lot of details here about what they are. If you notice, there's that little button around the magnet tool. That means that any of these tools that have a little button around them are turned on at the moment. If you want to turn them off, you just click on it. It's a toggle switch, so you click it on, click it off, and they default to on. These these two right here. So one of the first things you want to do when you get in here is turn these two off so that you're not accidentally cutting your video up or cutting your audio up. When I first got this application, I ended up with absolutely shredded audio because I didn't realize these things were on by default, because that little line is pretty hard to miss. And again, this gives you your familiarization for all of your items. This line here is your time spacing through your project. Okay, and it starts out with 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, pretty much. And it will go to the full length of your project as you build it. And as you work your way out, you'll see that you can actually you can take this little red thing and drag it out here. And that is where you're going to be working. You can, if you zoom in on your timeline by dragging this to the left, you will suddenly see that everything in here gets cut into fractions between a 16th of a second and a 32nd of a second. Suddenly you get all the little tiny increments in between. So you can get very precise about where you're placing things on your timeline. Often that is a problem because you can't quite get something dialed in to exactly where you want it to start. So when that happens, I just make this bigger by dragging it over here, and then I work with the timeline down below to line it up with one of the exact precise moments where I want it to start. Your playhead is this little red marker here, is where your video is set to start. So if you drag that playhead out, which you can do just by clicking on it and dragging it, if you drag that out, and you hit play to replay what you're doing, it will start wherever you dragged it to. And it won't go back there until it won't like leave that point to start until you hit this button here and make it go back to the beginning or push it to the very end. Okay. The post indicators are marked already, and they, as I said, scale up and down depending on how closely you're viewing it. The asset tracks themselves are kind of handy to know about. I always put my audio in the first track or the first and second track when I'm doing this. And part of the reason for that is because if you put audio on top of a video asset, like a still, a photograph, or a slide, what'll happen is that the audio will automatically turn the screen black for anything that's in the tracks below it. And it will take over your visuals. So I always reserve track 1 and track 2 at least for audio so that they're not interfering with my images up here. I can move a piece of audio around anywhere from left to right in here to get it to start and stop where I want it. So that means that in two things, I can have multiple audio clips in here. One that starts here, okay, one that starts over here later, and one, maybe even one that starts over here later again, and then just have a little waveform at the very bottom on the first 3 tracks that handles all of my audio stuff. So I can actually have a music soundtrack running here. I can have some birds chirping over it here, and I can have wind blowing over it here, and I can be very precise as to when those soundtracks actually start and end. Further up, I can actually put in slides and images, and I'll show you that later. Okay, you can right click on any blue timeline marker to get the option to remove it. Okay, these little blue tick mark things here are timeline markers, and you can put the markers in there to say, okay, I want you to start here and end here. In this one, I've set one to start at the beginning and one to start less than 8 seconds later. And all I'm working with is that introductory file here. Okay, and I don't necessarily want everything after here to play when I tell it to go ahead and play what I've done. I just want it to play that little segment and it will stop there. So that's what the timeline markers are for. Once you've set them, all you do to set them is drag them out. Okay, or you can use this little timeline marker button to set your first one if it's out here. So click, click, and then click, click, and you've got your little segment marked out, and that's what your timeline will allow you to work with at that point. Once you've finished, you just right click on this and it will ask you, do you want to remove it? And you click on the little red button or the remove marker command and you can take it off. Don't use the bottom and side scroll bars for the timelines or times to view, because if you've got these things set, you will actually end up, you'll have this little timeline thing here down at the bottom that you can actually move through, and you'll see it later actually showing you what's going on. Okay, I always use markers just because they're clearer to me and they're easier to use. So the interesting thing about video and audio is that both video and audio editing is done using the tracks to manage the timing and the priorities. And so once you learn how to navigate around in a single track, you've kind of learned how to navigate in every track. Assets are just things that you want to put in your video. Most often those will be audio clips as your soundtracks, or Foley clips, which are sound effects. They will be photo images or graphics that you make in something like Canva. I make all my slides in Canva and then do my photo images just as photos. I use video clips from my video camera or smartphone or tablet in here, and those are just video assets. Okay, so they fall into the basic 3 categories of still images, video clips, and audio clips. The assets are managed on your computer using Finder if you're using a Mac, or File Explorer if you're using Windows PC. And these are important to know before you start messing around with OpenShot or any of the other things, because, and you will see me say this again and again and again through here, keep all your eggs in one basket. Everything you're going to use in your video should be in one folder on your computer, and you should be working within that folder to create your video project. There are 2 reasons for this. One is because flipping back and forth between the controls on your Mac or your PC for moving files around outside of OpenShot is different than moving files around within OpenShot. And you will get very confused if you have to navigate mentally through a whole bunch of different folders on both sides. I have a handy little templated folder set that I use, and I will show you those after as well. So I just I have a folder structure set up on my computer. I just copy it into a different folder, rename it, And that's where I put all of my assets for any given video project in that folder structure. You may want to use some additional tools that we're not going to cover in any detail today to polish up the assets you have for use. You may want an audio editor like Audacity or NCH's WavePad. Audacity is free. It operates the same as OpenShot, only it just handles audio files and sound effects files. Sometimes you want the precision of a specific audio editor more than what you've got precision for in OpenShot. So you may want to use one of those as you get more advanced. You can use the simple image editors like Canva, Microsoft Paint, or iPhoto for making your slides and retouching photos. I like freebies. Microsoft Paint comes with the Windows operating system. iPhoto comes with the Mac, and Canva comes free online. So I like those three. I'm really, really tight-fisted because I'm an artist and I'm always broke. So Finder on your Mac will help you manage avoiding to navigate a lot while you're working in OpenShot and trying to mentally navigate through different timelines and things as well. I use Zoom for recording myself talking for a voice track, or as a video, making a video for an audition tape or an artist training workshop that I'm doing. I don't spend a lot of money on things other than Zoom for recording myself because I have a limited income, and Zoom does a lovely adequate job if you have a light on a tripod right behind your computer. It also does a lovely job of recording your voice or your discussion, and allows you to use that as an edit. So you can take out the ums and ers and ahs that I consistently, as you can hear, have as word whiskers in my speech. I have a couple of gooseneck desk lamps with soft white grow light bulbs to use as studio lights. So if I have to take pictures of something, I just flop it down on the underneath these two soft white grow light bulbs in standard desk lamps and use those as my lighting for the studio. Most of the stuff I'm taking pictures of for OpenShot work is very, very simple, straightforward stuff. Otherwise, I use a scanner for flat objects, and that's everything I have. So everything I'm going to do, I first copy it on, get it onto my computer, and then I put all of the things that I'm going to use into my folders again for use within OpenShot. I also sometimes will use images for ready-made stuff, and there are plenty of freebie and for-profit outfits out there doing it. Photo and imaging sites that are bargain basement prices or freebies are Pixabay, Vecteezy, Unsplash, and Paxels. And as I said earlier, any of these items are actually a link. So if you're playing the replay of this thing, you can actually click on any of these and have it take you there, but you may want to stop the video before, or stop the replay of your video before you click on it and go there. Okay, the copyrights in all of these are Creative Commons, royalty free, or are copyrighted and licensed out by professional image makers in these expensive ones. Please, if you're going to use these sites here, please respect the copyrights and byline requests. These are fellow artists that we're dealing with, and they are willing to put stuff up there just for the exposure because they know there's a need for it and not everybody can afford it. And they're students and they're trying to get the exposure. So So if you give them the exposure, you're helping them along, in addition to getting their work for free. These guys are going to charge you money. They're probably the big three. They have vast storehouses of stuff, and Getty Images and Microsoft both partner together nowadays, and they charge big bucks because they are probably the world's biggest and most high quality images, as far as a stock image house goes. Sound items, there's ready-made stuff in all of these. Okay, and again, they're links, and again, they're fellow artists. So please, if you do use their stuff, please put the byline on. Each of these offers you an option to copy the byline that they want used. So if you copy that and put it on there, you're doing a small amount to repay them for their efforts. Okay, so, and I keep saying, keep all your eggs in one basket. That's because I get confused navigating between all of the stuff, and I'm probably not alone with that, and I do this all the time. So I should be by now mentally practiced enough to just do it without thinking. Unfortunately, that's not the case. I get distracted by my coffee cup some days, so I don't want to have to think too much. So especially when you're using OpenShot, one of the tricky bits about OpenShot is that when you've created your project and you put your assets in and you save your project file, that set of source files is link sensitive. If you do your project file and then you move any of the assets out of your folder structure where you had them, then your master file for your video crashes because it's missing an asset it thinks it's supposed to have. So you have to be very aware of that and make sure that you keep an archive where all of the pieces that you put in your video are still accessible to you in case you want to update it someday later. I've had to redo entire videos for workshops and stuff that I that I thought I had archived because I didn't realize this when I started out with OpenShot. So now that's why I end up with the big folder template. The other thing I do is I save after every 3 changes. All of those free programs can occasionally be a bit crashy, especially after you get an update from Microsoft or from Apple on your computer. And so what'll happen is there's a bug in the update. It will crash the intense resource usage applications on your computer. And OpenShot and audio files are perhaps the most resource intense applications that you can use on a computer. So every 3 steps that I make in a project file, I go hit the Save Project button. Okay, I'm not going to demonstrate that right now because there's a lot of material, but later if we have time, I'll demonstrate that how to do that. So naming conventions and file management. After 3 years of working with OpenShot, I figured out that actually this file structure that I'm showing you here works beautifully. I have my raw images that I want to edit and divided into photos and slides. I have raw sound files that I want to edit with sound effects, music, and voice. These are just voiceovers that I do occasionally. I have raw video clips, my own videos that I took, purchased licensed ones because I need to make sure I have licensing information about them in the same folder, and the royalty-free ones here. Once I have finished editing any of these items and I'm satisfied with it, Then I move it from its existing folder into the assets ready to import folder. And I try to set up the assets ready to import folder completely before I ever open OpenShot, for reasons that you'll see later on. So I do all of this work ahead of time if I can. Okay, I go to Canva, make my slides. I go drag all the photos that I want in here that I need to use to illustrate things. I go to one of those sites and get down any sound effects or music that I want to do. I go into Zoom and record my voice track. Stash it in here. Any video clips that I took, I drag in here from my smartphone application files or folders. Purchase licensed, I download into here, and royalty-free stuff I download into here. So once I've got all of that stuff set up to edit, I go in and fine tune it as much as I can without OpenShot, so it's presentation ready. And then once it's fine tuned, I just copy it here. I don't remove it from here. I just copy it here instead of moving it outright. And there's a reason for that, because there are going to be times when you may want to go back to a project years later and have to replace a specific item, and you want to know exactly which items you used originally for that. Okay, I just call my template my OpenShot project on my file manager, and that's the one I actually copy to a new place on my computer and name it. I have one in my computer right now for this presentation that says CanArts OpenShot Workshop, and all of this stuff is loaded in there. So once I get everything loaded and I do all of the work in OpenShot, then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to export it. Okay, so I prepare for the export by checking my spelling and grammar throughout using the preview. I run that 3 times and make notes each time, and I give myself a 10-minute break in between runs. Go get a cup of coffee, water my plants, do whatever. And then I come back and run it again for the second time and the third time, because I miss things if I don't take that break in between. Then I finally go back and make any of the final touch-ups or revisions that I want to make, and I'm ready to export. When I've chosen my export settings, which include the video's title, the file name and folder where I'm going to store it, the video resolution, the video format, and the quality, then I export it by choosing the video format, whether it's going to be an MP4, an AVI, or an MOV. AVI is for Windows platform only, MOV is for Macs. You can use them both interchangeably in OpenShot. I'm on a Windows PC for my graphics machine, and I regularly use and run MOV files on it. And I also actually have run AVI files on my Mac as well. The MP4 is my favorite output form for videos that I've worked on. So, and that's pretty ubiquitous. Everybody's finished product ends up in MP4 at the end. You can also choose to export for specifically for different platforms. YouTube and social media like Instagram, Reels, TikTok, Facebook, you can export for those specifically. I tend to export everything for YouTube, just because if I put it ready for YouTube, it's ready for downloads for events like this one. It's actually, the YouTube is fairly cross-platform nowadays. So, and I sometimes have to troubleshoot some common export issues where I get a little glitch in the playback or something like that. So I will actually export it once And then I will play it back. I'll do the same 3 times playing it back. Very tedious, but if I play it back 3 times, make notes, I get everything before I actually have to do any work. And then I go and do all of the work, and then I export it last, and it actually saves time in the long run. So the export settings that you'll need is your video title, the file name and folder names that you're using, okay, your screen resolution, your format, and the platform. And so what you do is you set those and you hit export and go get your coffee or your scotch or whatever you're going to use in your break to relax. And then you're going to review your exported video and take the notes of any changes. You're going to go through an editing and tweaking process. You're going to export it again using the same settings and checking all the settings. And then you're going to let it sit overnight or over the weekend. And then you're going to go back and repeat all of the review again once more before you publish it or launch it. Once you have done the second export, you want to make sure that you have a total backup of all the project files to your backup system, which is another reason why I let it sit overnight or over the weekend. My backup runs automatically overnight, and that's saved me more than once because I'll get a network crash or something that corrupts some part of my files while I'm working on it, and I can just go get it off my backup. So to start a new project, I first create and save a new project. I import all of the media files to the asset window pane. I put the opening slide on track 2 or 3 in the window panes, and I put the main audio track on track 1. This is just to get started. I may actually move these around once I'm started and I've got a good understanding of how to do that part. Then I add any video clips to track 3 up above the opening slide. I do the arrangements and trimming of my clips. Sometimes I will split and merge clips, and that could be audio clips or video clips. So I may have an introductory piece of audio that then I do a crossfade into the main soundtrack, or I may put a fade between the assets, and I can put fades in and out on any of the assets that I use. So if it's a slide or a photograph or a video or an audio, it can be faded in and it can be faded out. And I make fairly heavy use of that because it just makes the whole thing look so much more professional. There are also fancier transitions between items in OpenShot. And to be honest, I very rarely use the wipes or the slides. I tend to use the fade a lot because following the KISS rule is sort of the mark of a professional in the video production industry. And using lots and lots of the really fancy swoopy transitions that are available as options, the more of them that you use, the more amateur the viewer will regard your work as. So unless you've got a specific need for those wipes and slides of photographs and things, just use the fades and stick to those as much as you can. The timeline and track editing tools, we talked about the little snapper, which is the magnet thing. The razor or scissors tool actually lets you cut clips apart and, you know, use those. And of course, there's the zooming in and out on the timeline that you're going to make heavy use of while you're doing this part. Okay, so I'm going to get into a short demo of a simple project at this point to show you what it looks like. Okay, and I'm making a video at this point of, I'm just going to, go here. Oop, sorry, and get to my open shot. Okay, and here's my open shot. All right, and I've got most of my stuff set up, except I still have this properties window open. So I'm going to close that and get rid of it. Don't want it there. And I don't really want the captions there. And I don't really want these transition effects there. So I'm going to just shut those off. Okay. What I did to get all of these items in here was I went to the plus sign and I went to my, this took me to my computer's files and my template files. And I have all of my assets in here, the stuff I was going to use for raw images and so on and so forth. I have put them all in one place in the assets ready to import. And all I do is I go to the sound and tracks first, and I grab all of those. Okay, select them all. And then I just click open and it drags them in here. Okay, and you'll see that I have my Shoreside Birds audio track up here. I have my Spring, A Murder of Crows track here. I have some Summer Birds track here, and I have something called a Coniferous Forest here. Okay, so all I've done is do this and hit open, and it moved those in there. Then I just go back here, back to my assets, go back to my stills and slides, and copy all of these, and I can actually select all of them. Okay, and just hit open and all of them get brought in at once. I tend to do this by categories just because it makes everything easier to find once it's in open shot. Okay, so, and you can see that I have these summer and winter and fall and stuff like that on here. Okay, and you can see I have my slides as well that I made with Canva in here. Okay, so they all end up in here with their same icons that they had in my computer. And then the next thing I do is I go and I get my video clips and I do exactly the same thing here. I select all of them and copy them all in here as well. Okay, and you see they're here. Okay, so now I can tell that if it's got notes on it, it's just audio. If it's got little film tracks beside it, it's video. If it's got nothing beside it, it's actually a still image. And I can start putting things in there. So the first thing that I wanted to do was put in my opening slide. So here's my very first opening slide. And all I did was drag it down here and drag it over to the left. Okay, so it's just a drag and drop. And here's my image. And if I start to play that, it shows me my title slide. If I want to go back to the very beginning, okay, I notice too that one of the things I did was I put a fade in on my opening slide. And I did that with controls right in the track window. Okay, if I right click on any of the items in the track, I get a item specific menu for doing things with. And the very biggest one I use is the fade. And I can do a start of clip, end of clip, or entire clip, fade in and out. Okay. or I can remove all of the fades and start over, because sometimes I get the timing wrong. When I try to do it with a fade in slow, it doesn't work quite right. So I want to change that. So I just change everything to no fade, and it signifies that by immediately showing me the screen before I've even started the thing. So I know right away, if this is showing up here, there's no fade applied to that. So it's just going to go bang onto the screen when you start the file. I'm not wild about that. So I always go here, and I always, with my title thing, use the entire clip, and I tell it to fade in and out fast. Okay. And as soon as I do that, it vanishes off my screen while my playhead is there. And it only shows up again by fading in and fading out as I move through the asset. Okay, the sound file, if I move my sound file up here, okay, what will happen is that when I play it, I'll get part of my visual, okay, to run. I'll get that starting, and sometimes that soundtrack will wipe out the images that are below it. So I always put my soundtracks down here. Okay, so once I've completely put the fade in here at the entire clip for this one, fade in and out fast, then I move to my audio file, and I may do the same thing. I may just give it a fade in and out fast, okay? Or a fade in and out slow, depending on how much I want to do it. If I fade in the entire clip, it will gradually get louder toward the center and then fade off from the center. So I almost never use that. I use these two and these two, but I almost never use these. Okay, and I use this one a lot because often I figure I mess up the fades based on each other and I can't do it, or it doesn't work nicely. So once I've got the first two items set up with fades, then the next thing I do is I run the thing and see how it looks. And I check to see if that music starts soon enough or not. And if it doesn't, then I will actually move this around. Okay, and I will make my timeline bigger so that I can actually see the parts in here and say, okay, I want this to start here instead of there. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the beginning and I'm going to play again. And there's not quite as much of a gap between the start of the video and the start of the audio. And of course, you can start the audio with a blank screen ahead or not. I'm now going to move this, and you'll see that this timeline, I can now see the entire video on here. I like to keep it showing me the entire video, or sorry, the entire soundtrack on my project, because that soundtrack is basically what determines how long my video is going to be. This video is 2 minutes and 8 seconds long, so it's a very short video. But if I can see all of the soundtrack, when I move up through the different tracks, I know that at 2 minutes and 8 seconds, if I'm way over here with a video at 2.6 or a still with 2:16, it's not going to show up before the soundtrack ends. So that means I need to adjust the timing on some of my assets in between the beginning and the end. All right, so I've got my opening slide. I've got my audio track in there. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add my second slide, which is also an introductory slide. I'm going to drag it in here. Okay, I'm going to overlap it a bit, because as you see, there's a fade out here, and I'm going to put a fade in on here. So I'm going to fade the entire clip in and out fast. Okay, and it puts these two little dots on either end to show me that it's actually got a fade on it. As soon as I select anything, I can tell whether it's been faded in or not. Now, if I look here, I've got a fade out starting there at just about 8-10 seconds. And I've got a fade in starting here at just about 10 seconds. So those two fades are doing something called a crossfade. Okay, if I don't want sudden changes, that crossfade makes it look fairly professional. Now, that one I'm thinking is just too tight, so I'm going to move it a bit and try it again. And voila, I have an almost perfect crossfade there. Okay, so what I'll do next is, now that I've got that happening, I will then move my scroll bar up one track. Okay, and if I have a number 3 slide with text, because my introductory slides may actually be important for people to know. So here I go again. I'm going to do the fade at the entire clip, fading in and out fast. Okay, I look here, I look there. I know already from the position of the dots that I'm starting this one too soon, so I'm going to drag it out a little bit. Check it again. Yeah, that looks like it was perfectly balanced, and then I jiggled it. Okay, so now I'm just going to play that forward. It allows people to look at that long enough to read it briefly. And then it gives them the last little bit of information and lets them look at that. Okay, so now if I go back to the very beginning, I have a nice smooth introduction with the music starting, chance for people to read. And you don't want these too long. That one's a bit of a jagged start again. Gonna stop it. Drag it a little further over here. Okay. All right. Take the playhead back and do that. That's better. Okay, and I'm just going to stop the play, put the playhead back at the beginning. Okay, and you'll notice the soundtrack just keeps going in the background for all of that. So then the next thing I have is I have the seasons, because I said in this slide, 2 safaris per season. Okay, so now I want to actually sort of go around the year to say, okay, so now I have spring, summer, winter, and fall. I have clips from all of those. All right, and I have slides. So I go grab my, I have 2 slides for spring. Okay, one has no writing on it, and the second one has the word spring on it. I wanted to have the season sort of fall in after the name of the season sort of appear on top of the slide. So what I did was I took my image into Canva and I just put writing on it and saved 2 files, one with just the image and one with that. And then I've got my playhead over here. I'm going to want to fade these in. So I'm going to select both of them, right click, choose fade, choose entire clip, and fade in and out fast on both of them. This one, I'm going to click away from them to get the selection off so I'm not dragging them around unnecessarily. All right, and I'm going to drag this a little bit further over, and I've got the fades in there. And now I'm going to go see if I've got this fade in at the right place after this slide. So now I'm just going to go like that. Oh, and it's too soon. Okay, because this one still isn't finished. So now I'm going to drag this a bit this way, move my playhead back, because I want that. Okay, it's still too close. So now I'm going to drag this back even a bit further, move my playhead back. And that's a much smoother transition. And the spring part, I don't care about the transition because I just want that word to appear, and I want it to be appearing a little later than the image itself. So if I go back here, now I have the effect of having, okay, this fades in, and then the word fades in, and then I'm on to the next piece of the slide. So I move up again, and I've got track 7 here. Okay, and now for spring, I have a video clip that I want to show for spring. So I'm going to drag my video clip in. I am going to actually choose the start of the clip and the end of the clip and fade them in and out fast. Okay. And I'm going to try and line that up as smoothly as I can. Doo-doo. Yep, those 2 dots are lined up fairly smoothly. So now I'm just going to run this and see what I get. And voila, my video actually starts to play. Now, if I actually have sound with these video tracks, one of the things that I did before I did anything else was I actually dragged my video tracks in here one at a time in a file that wasn't a project file. And all I did was, if I want the audio off of this so it doesn't interfere, all I do is I put it on a place in the lines, in the tracks, where I have 2 empty tracks below. I then right-click on it and I choose Separate Audio, and I choose Multiple Clips in case the audio for that clip is in stereo. If it has any audio attached to it at all, the audio indicators will show up in here as waveforms. And I can just select the waveforms, delete them, and then all of the audio has been stripped off of this video. So now I don't have to worry about audio from a video clip that was captured by my camera or my smartphone or whatever, interfering with the primary soundtrack of my item here. Okay, so now I've got the audio, any audio that was on there is now off. So now I just make sure of my transition again, since I dragged it around and moved it. Yep, that looks pretty good. Okay, and now I'm up to track 7. Okay, and I don't really want to manage huge numbers of tracks here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start making a wave downward to fill in tracks here, because I don't want to have 18 tracks and run up and down this thing all day long just to edit things. Okay, and I want to be able to see at least 3 of them on here. So one of the things I might do at this point is I'm going to grab this little set of buttons down here. I'm going to make my video window smaller and my view of my tracks bigger, so I don't have to scroll up and down so much, and I can still see a number of the assets in here. Okay, so I've got my spring video done. Now I want to move into summer. Okay, so I'm going to go find my 2 summer items. Okay, I'm going to drag the blank one there and this one here. Whoop, I need that to be on top, sorry. So what I might want to do is actually drag these down like this. Okay. And I'm going to select both of them and put the fade on first, because that's alignment is important. So okay, and now I'm going to move my playhead over here, just like that, and check to see if I've got the crossfade working, and I haven't. I've got it too far away. So what I'm going to do is select both of these and drag the pair of them a bit further this way. Move my playhead. And I think this one is too far back, so I'm going to move it forward, move my playhead, and repeat. Now I'm just going to keep doing this all the way through my assets. And when I end up at the end, hopefully I will have the timing set up so that all of these things, the time is actually correct for all of these. And my last 2 slides, okay, for the video, I may actually stick in here now. All right, and I'm going to want those to appear about here and here. Okay, and I don't necessarily want those to have music all the way through them, because I want people to be looking at these when I do it. So I may stick those in there just so I have a visual of where the end of my video is. And I'll just leave them there as a marker for now and put in the fades and whatnot afterward. And then I'll go through and fill in the rest of them. So what happened with that is I now have I now have actually gone through all of this and tested all of that individually and reviewed it and stuff. And what I have now is a more or less complete video with assets that come in and come out. I have my soundtrack running here, and here I have some sound effects. Okay, my Murder of Crows is repeating all the way through there. I don't necessarily want that. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to go trim my Murder of Crows soundtrack so that it's not actually working everywhere. So I've got now 4 pieces of it. I'm just going to delete the center one. Okay, I've got crows going there. I've got shorebirds going here. I've got just the bass soundtrack going here, and I've got the crows coming back at the end. Okay, so now I'm happy that I've got the sound working the way I want it. Everything's in sequence. I've tested all of these transitions to make sure they're happy. Okay, and I can see up here that if I have this down like this, I can see from this little indicator on the bar that guess what? I have a lot more tracks than are visible just in track 1 and track 2. So I can then drag this all the way up and see all of them at once if I want to, and just get a tiny preview of what's going on there. Now that I've got everything in place, step by step by step, all the way across, okay, and I'm pretty happy with the way that I've got this laid out at this point, okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I am going to actually create the video file, and I have been saving, hopefully, all the way along, okay. I have saved project. Okay, now that I've made that last little correction, I just save the project again, and it saves all of this work in a project file for OpenShot. The next thing I'm going to do is export the project, okay, and create a full video of it. And I'm going to say, okay, the file name is, and that is also the title of my video at this point. So I've just got the year and the month, Urban Nature Photo Safaris for the Urban Nature In-Town Experiences program, and this is the trailer for the program. The folder path, I have actually determined where I want it, but I also can browse here. And when I browse, that takes me back to my Windows filing system, and I can actually choose where I want to put it. Okay, for me, I'm happy to have it in the demo project at the moment. Okay, so that's what I'm going to choose. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that canceled because it's where I want it to be. And then I'm going to go look at this information here. I'm going to choose the format. And if I'm going to put this on Blu-ray for anything, if it's going to be distributed with a movie promotion thing or anything like that, I'll choose this one. Just a DVD for people that are only going to use it on computers, a specific device type, or for the web. Okay, so I can choose that, or I can tell it that I want it to work on all formats, and I choose all formats almost all the time. I want it in MP4 because this is going to be my final thing, okay? And I want it in high definition, 1280 by 720. All right, so, and I want high quality. In advanced, I want to export it to video and audio, or I can just export the video with no soundtrack, or I can just export audio, or I can export it in only the image sequence. So I can actually build separate parts of a bigger project by just selecting that. For most of my projects, they're small and short, they're less than 8 minutes, so I choose video and audio. Start at frame 1, end at the end frame, whatever that happens to be. Okay, video settings, I just double check that it's MP4. Audio settings, I can choose stereo, surround sound, or mono. I generally choose stereo because it just makes it a nicer thing. Okay, and then once I've done all that, then I click on export video. And then it says, oh, you've already made this once. Do I want to replace it? And I'm going to say yes, I do, because I've made a change. And it's going to start actually rendering the video now based on everything I've told it to do. This sometimes takes a while. If you get up beyond about 4 minutes, it takes quite a long time to actually produce this. So at this point, I generally get up, walk away, get a fresh cup of coffee, because this has taken me an hour or so to do all this. and I, you know, wash my hands, get a snack, blah, 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 pet the cat, come back, look to see if it's finished yet. And if it's not, I go check the mail and so on and so forth. Then I come back and eventually it is done and I will be able to preview my video. So this is moving fairly fast because it's a short one, so I'm going to let it go. Ta-da, it's done. I'm going to click OK here, and then I'm going to go and I am going to find my video here. And that is today's date. There's my file with the video in it. I'm going to start it up. And this title down here will not show up on YouTube or anywhere. It just shows up on my online video player. Okay, and it's going to run through and show me the whole video. There's my crows coming in where I wanted them. Okay, don't want to play the whole thing for you. All right, so I'm going to go and I'm going to play it once more. Drag it in there. Okay, and I'm going to drag this over here. Okay, and there I am at the end of my video. After I've played it through completely, I've just made some notes. Okay, and I've got my my link or my QR code to link it to where it is on people's smartphones. Okay, so they can actually get more information from the website or whatever. Once I'm totally happy with that, or I've made notes about stuff I want to change, I just go back in to my big file here and I make adjustments on these depending on where I made notes. That last bit is tedious because it's the nitpicky part where you're going, oh, I moved this, now I have to move that to catch up with it and da-da-da-da. So you're going to be fiddling around with stuff in there on the last part. But there's an entire video project for you, more or less already done. And all of the instructions for doing all of that are in your handout, written out like this, okay, with all the stuff that you need to do and the changes and things, because I know you're not going to remember all of this, okay? There's tips in there, so all of this is in your handout as well. There is things to remember about different stuff, so you can look at that. There's your export. And now we're at the point in the program where we can start asking or answering questions. So Scott, if you want to take it over, I will stop sharing my screen and we'll handle some questions now.
Okay, thank you so much, Leah. I suspect if everybody's like me, we're going to be wanting to look at the video, go through your slides, and have OpenShot actually up there, because it's going to take some playing around with, right? It's
intense. That's why I did the workshop the way I did it, because there's way too much of it without giving you a 4-hour workshop on details, which I know nobody has time for right now.
Right.
And, you know, people need to be able to afford a 4-hour workshop too, which is hard. However, everything is in the handouts. So what you want is to print out the handout, use the video, start it and stop it, read the notes in the handout, make notes on the printout of your handout, and try it out. Try out a 1-minute video to start with. Okay, and I spotted somebody saying, hey, how do I get rid of an annoying hum from a video recording? If you remember that little trick I pulled with putting the audio on a separate track away from everything else and telling it to separate audio, that's what that function is for, because that happens to more people because your recording studio may or may not be a professional studio. If you're me, it's definitely not. So my cat is rustling paper or whatever when I'm talking, and I don't want
Doing
that
what cats do.
Yeah, or he's walking on the keyboard and making things squeak. So I'm always cutting this down. Okay, if you go to leahmurray.ca, that will get you to my main website. Okay, and you don't need my website to get the handout and whatnot. You need my website if you want to get me to give you more training or anything like that. This video and whatnot will be on the Canadian Artists Network website with the handout, so you can grab it right there.
And that will probably happen early next week. That we'll have it up, and I'll send out a note to everybody when it is. Now, we do have a few questions. One observation from me, and somebody else raised a question about this. They couldn't hear the audio of your video all that well, and I couldn't either.
Yeah.
But that's a Zoom thing, right?
Yeah, that was my fault because I forgot to click the button on the Zoom display that said share the audio too.
No,
my apologies, folks.
It was popping in and out. It was
Yeah.
it just wasn't there constantly, and I suspect that's a Zoom thing.
Yeah,
but
it's
somebody
a bandwidth
wanted
thing because OpenShot takes a lot of bandwidth to go back
Right.
and forth, and Zoom takes a lot of OpenShot or a lot of bandwidth, and so they fight with each other. But
Yeah.
once you look at the video just on your computer, it shouldn't be dropping in and out like that.
Somebody wondered where they could see the entire video that you just created.
Oh, actually, I'm going to be launching a program in the spring to introduce people to doing nature photo safaris in an urban setting. Okay, because this is a silly thing here. I actually want to focus on Canadian city dwellers to get them more engaged with the environment. So one of the things I'm doing is taking people out for photo safaris in the city of Surrey, because it's the city of parks, and showing them how to track rabbits and owls and this and that and the other thing, and get them on camera and so on, right in the city instead of having to go to a thing. Anyway, but yes, you will be able to see my video if you want it on that video that I just made. If you want it on the CAN site, I'll happily give it to Scott to put up there with everything as the sample video. And if you want to share it with anybody to promote my program, I'll be even happier about that. That's coming in the spring, and it has my website at the end of my little video as well. So
Great. Okay. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll post that along with the video of this session. So a few other questions. Please explain the difference between MPS and MOV.
MOV is an old video format that Apple created back in the day. They were actually leaders in the video, audio, and visual parts of computing, as you may know. And they were one of the first computer corporations to come out with tools for doing that for their users. So Apple has a long history of that. And there are tons of people around who still use smartphones. Like I use an iPhone. I don't use a Android phone. My iPhone records in MOV format.
And what is MPS?
Unless I tell it to record in something better, because my iPhone's pretty smart. So call it a smartphone for a reason.
What is MPS or is
MP4?
Maybe the it's a typo and he meant to say MP4.
It's supposed to be MP4.
Right.
There are MP3 files and MP4 files in the video and audio world. MP3 is movie production 3, which only handles sound.
Okay.
MP4 handles sound and video.
And it's kind of the default
everybody
format,
in the
isn't it?
everybody in the film and video industry uses those two. There are professionals in that industry that use some very high-end stuff if they're integrating computer graphics or anything like that, or animations. They're going to use a different format for their master files and for their finished product. You will almost never see an entire movie in MP4 or an entire album in MP3. You will only see little bits of it as the promotional and the teaser, because MP3 and MP4 files do not have any digital rights management protection on it. Okay. So to store files like this for people to download them for free, I use my YouTube channel. Okay. And it has some digital rights management built into the channel. So if somebody pirates it and starts selling it, YouTube will know about it and will notify them to cease. If they download it and use it to learn, YouTube will not quibble with them unless I tell YouTube this one is a paid video. Okay, so YouTube manages that part of it. And
good to know. That's good to know.
Oh, and if you want to protect against AI, I think I mentioned this the other day. If you want to protect against AI, there's apps out there now that can tell any AI algorithms that are looking at it that they're not allowed to use it and prevent them from trying. So, and yes, YouTube is one of the folks. Thank you for reminding me of that. YouTube does that now. So,
great.
Well. Now, when I store my MP4 and MP3 files on my computer, they are stored in my folder system on Windows, and then I upload them to whoever needs them. Like I'll upload this to Scott after our meeting today, and he'll do what he needs to do with it and upload the rest.
Right. What's the maximum number of tracks the program will allow?
I don't know.
So it could be...
I have seen people use up to 18 tracks and still have room for more. However, that makes your computer really, really green about the gills. So you may want to just limit the number of tracks.
Good point. Well, as you showed, you can use a track for multiple things. Yeah. As long as they're not overlapping.
Yep, exactly. Or they're only overlapping the stuff you want them to overlap.
Right, exactly. Does the program allow for text-only tracks that can be superimposed over another video? So
yes, it does.
Like a title track, I guess.
Yep, you can do that. And there are controls right within there. So you can just load your video and away you go with putting in the titles and this and that right within OpenShot. I didn't show that today because we're fairly limited with time, but yes, you can do that in OpenShot. Go look at the help files, because all those tutorials in there are wonderful help, and they're very specific and nicely granulated, so you can look up stuff for what you want to know.
Great. Okay, well, I think that's all the time we have, Leah. Thank you so much for this. I must say, I have one of the paid programs. I have Movavi,
Yep.
and I think I'm going to switch over to OpenShot because I'm liking the looks of it a lot better than Movavi. So,
Well, they all have their advantages.
yes,
Movavi has much more professional tools built into it, but it's also much more complex to use
yes,
to find the tools. So
yeah,
OpenShot
exactly.
is a really great starter program. I started with it 3 years ago and I haven't run out of uses for it yet. So,
Right. So I think
and
that'll do it for us, Leah. Thank you
yeah,
so much for this. This has been great.
there are more questions in the chat. Scott, can you take a transcript of it? And I will go through the transcript
Sure.
of the chat and put a little answer Q&A thing at the end of my handout about what ones we didn't get to today.
Okay. Yes, I will do that for sure.
Okay,
I
thank
think
you.
it automatically saves the chat, but let me just make sure it's
Yeah.
saving the chat. Okay, good.
All right.
I'll
Thank
send
you
that
very
off to
much.
you.
Sorry I ran over time so much, but
There was a lot to cover,
yeah.
Leah. Thank you so much for this. This has
Oh, you're
been great.
welcome. You're welcome.
Uh,
And as usual, if you have questions, email me. I'll answer questions by email too.
Thank you again, Leah Murray.
All
And
right.
thank you to our series sponsor, TELUS.
Yes.
And most of all, thank you for being here today. As I mentioned, the video will be up on our website early next week, and I'll send out a notice to everybody to say it's up there. You can watch it and download Leah's slides and everything. Leah mentioned when we had our online salon on Tuesday, one of the subjects that came up, and we talked about it a lot, was artificial intelligence and how to protect your art from being stolen by artificial intelligence. There are apps out there. We are going to do a webinar in the not too distant future on that very topic. We're also going to do one coming up on how to prepare yourself for winter, just in terms of your mental health, because winter, you get to January and February and it brings a lot of us down. So we'll have a webinar from one of our community members on how to protect yourself from that. All of our webinars, public relations, art and neuroscience, preserving the mind, copyright, social media, artistic legacy preparations, identity theft, fraud prevention are all on our website. Don't forget our annual conference, which is coming up the week of October the 28th. More details about that are also on our website, which is canartnet.ca. So until we meet again, take care, be well, have a creative day, and thank you.